In order to understand the harms that we discussed in our last project, it is important to recognize the institutions and social structures that keep them in place. The three sections will highlight the nature of relationships in Appalachia, the rules that exist in this region, whether they be legal or normative, and the way that the varying parties are represented, which can be positive or negative. Jeremy Davidson, a 3-year-old boy from Virginia. Billy and Eileen Tussey, an elderly couple from Kentucky. Roy Mullins, Paul Kinder, and Charles Shortridge, coal miners from Virginia. The lives of all of these individuals were impacted by coal, whether it be in the case of being crushed with a boulder, as with 3-year-old Jeremy Davidson, having their house be destroyed, like the Tusseys, or contracting black lung disease due to mining work, such as with the Virginia miners. Although these people lived in different spaces, were different ages, and experienced different circumstances, they had a commonality. These individuals were Appalachians, those living in the Appalachian region of the United States. However, there is no single story for all Appalachians. Many face similar experiences of exploitation and hardships due to the mines that surround their lives. Normalcy in their shared spaces unite these people. So, these people have all had negative experiences due to a common malice. However, we have yet to define what malice is in this situation. Of course, as we have previously discussed, coal mining is harming individuals. Yet, what relationships exist within that general statement, and what is the nature of those relationships? In these previous examples, we can identify a few. The miner with their employer, individuals living near mining sites and the corporations who have the possibility to interact with them, and those who live in spaces occupied by miners with no ability to communicate with the corporations due to not being in the field of mining. In these situations, it seems as if the corporation or the employer of the miners is asserting itself as the dominant presence, practically forcing individuals into subordination, both within their business and outside of their business. We see how miners are placed into subordination through improper working conditions. Those who love their jobs and were obviously willing to risk a lot for their employers ultimately suffered irreversible consequences. Shortridge himself, a miner who now has permanent health problems, asserted how much he loved working in coal mining areas, in coal mines. That's all he knew, and that's how miners provided for their family. The love and financial reliance of the coal miner on the corporation is taken advantage of, revealing that the relationship is unbalanced and hierarchical. The stories of these miners, as told in their interview with PBS, seems to line up well with the numbers and statistics that are being reported. In particular, black lung develops from the inhalation of coal over long years of work. A study conducted by the CDC shows that 20.6% of long tenure miners who were tested in Kentucky, Virginia, and West Virginia tested positive for black lung. We mentioned many health effects that miners go through. Yet, it is not just the miners who suffer, as everyone who lives in these areas will. Health risks are much worse in Appalachia than the rest of the country. Cancer mortality rates are 10% higher. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease mortality rates are 27% higher. Injury mortality rates are 33% higher. Stroke mortality rates are 14% higher. Diabetes mortality rate is 11% higher, and heart disease mortality rates are 17% higher. Some subordination also takes place in the form of larger entities. Those possessing privilege and resources have the ability to manipulate laws and people. An example of this can be seen with Jeremy Davidson, the 3-year-old who was crushed by a boulder from a mining site in Virginia. In response to his death, Jeremy's family sued A&G Coal Corporation due to gross negligence for numerous reasons. According to Joseph Witt, The company was fined $15,000, the maximum at the time. This seems unjust, but are there other examples of coal mines bending the rules in order to escape consequences? How do the families living around corporations and mining sites avoid being exploited? According to miner No Accounts from Clintwood, Virginia, corporations try to act like they are complying with the laws, but even the inspectors know they are not. His peer, Edward Fuller, notes that you had to do what they said. If you didn't, it was your hide. So based on these first-hand accounts, we have reason to believe that the coal industry may not be acting completely correctly. Let's dig further. Due to so much of the land in Appalachia being privately owned by these mining corporations, the miners and everyday people do not have anywhere to turn in times of hardships. The private ownership of the land allows the mine operators to dictate where people can shop and live. Through the monopolistic control of food and clothing and tools and powder, the coal companies were able to render wage rates and wage increases meaningless. Of course, in addition to these abuses, there are laws in place to aid miners in facing injustice that may occur in the workplace. For example, the West Virginia Wrongful Death Act, which outlines the rights and circumstances that allow someone to sue because of a wrongful death. Yet, restrictions upon the act exist, such as the fact that deaths before 1988 do not fall under the provisions. Many representations exist that both harm and enable individuals in these relationships we discussed earlier. The miners, corporations, and surrounding individuals are all perceived negatively by some and positively by others. The miner, given that they are the subordinate in the relationship, can be perceived as weak. They are also associated with whiteness and masculinity. Even in the positive circumstance, when they are not perceived to be uneducated and weak, they are victimized. Corporations are perceived in many circumstances in one of two ways. They are either heroic or evil. They oftentimes are viewed as heroic by those who work for them, as they offer financial stability to employees. Despite these central images, there were female miners and miners of all races, not just white. Similarly, as this project has gone out of its way to describe the corporations were mainly evil and creating problems for both the miners and residents of rural Appalachia. Through understanding the representations, relations, and rules within Appalachian region, especially those between Appalachians and larger corporations, we can begin to dismantle harms and attempt to create solutions for them.